So, kia ora, Taino. It's so lovely to hear from you across the other side of the world from me at the moment. Welcome everybody to the Resilient Kids podcast. And today we're talking with Taino Bendz. And would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, definitely. Lovely to see and talk to you again, Madeleine, and appreciate the invite. So I am where to start or where to do a short intro. I work with digital well-being, and I'm a speaker. I work with research. I consult, so I help organizations and groups with digital well-being and connected to resilience. And I'm writing a book as well. I'm from Sweden, have spent a couple of years in New Zealand, and that's where our paths crossed. So Aotearoa has a big place in my heart. Father of two boys, William 6 and Albert 4.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And Taino, you and I had the privilege of writing a little article that went into a local Teachers Matters magazine, and you've been looking at the Phone Smart Day and doing a lot of work helping our community become more aware of the impact of digital technology on our children and our families.
Yeah, it's definitely a question that I'm very passionate about, and it all really, I mean, it's connected to kids. It's connected to what we will talk about here on the podcast about resilience and helping parents. And as we talked about just before you hit record, that, you know, we don't really, as parents, don't get any support, any advice on how to deal with this stuff. And I'm sure we'll get into that too.
So tell me what your topic is today. I'm excited to hear.
Yeah. So I've got a few topics, and one is around technology, but one is around bullying. If you ask my mom, she would say I was bullied as a child or during periods. I remember parts of it. I wouldn't go as far as calling it bullying, but so it's something that, and it wasn't for long. It was short periods. So it's something that I'm aware of, and also my kids are quite, if you say, like, soft. They're very, you know, that's how we've raised them. They're caring, they're empathetic. We have, you know, very specific values that, and how you treat other people and all of this, and I really stand for that. But on the other side, it can also mean that, you know, they might not be as good as standing up for themselves. So I guess actually now as I'm speaking, it is really connected to resilience, because I want to give them these values on how you treat other people and all of this. But at the same time, I want them to be resilient and strong in themselves. But right now, you know, I see, when I drop the kids off, for example, I see how other kids play, and you know, sometimes it is quite, the language is quite hard, even, you know, for 6, 7, 8-year-olds. They curse, and they I think also it's a bit influenced by media and things they see, but like how they act in quite a hard way. And then I see my little guy, you know, looking around, who do I play with in the morning. It's quite a potentially stressful, you know, environment to come to when you're 6. And it's like, okay, so they're playing there, they look busy, and sometimes I've seen him stand there and not really, you know, engaging, and that hurts. And I've talked to him about it, and then, you know, with sometimes things pop up like, oh, this person did this and that to me today. And you know, trying to understand and connect into my thing about bullying, like, okay, is this just kids being kids, and the next time it's my son doing the same, you know, small instances or small conflicts, or is it a pattern? So yeah, that's something that I think about, bullying connected to like isolation, I guess, or
Yeah.
not being included in the group, in a group.
And so as you were talking, I was thinking about a few things here. And so this might be interesting for us to talk about. So the first question that came to my mind is, who's feeling hurt in this situation?
I've asked him, because I don't know if I'm projecting, my own childhood or my view of how things should be. And when he walks into the schoolyard, 10 kids should come dancing up to him and say, "Do you want to play?" And if as I said, projecting myself as a 6-year-old, nervous on the schoolyard, and I've asked him about it, and he says, it's fine. So to answer that question, I don't, as it is right now, it's a great question, and I don't think anyone is getting hurt right now.
So I think that's sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a really important thing, is to realize that our job obviously is to support our children, but not to, if they're not worried about it, not to feed our worry, and thinking about how do we get the balance, how do we know, and how do we notice what's our stuff and what's their stuff. So it's a great thing to talk about.
It is, and it's really good point, because what you said about feeding it, because I haven't actually thought in the terms that maybe it's my own, suppressed emotions or whatever it is, but I haven't thought that, but I have been thinking that I don't want to create something or a fear or a problem where there isn't one, and feed something, like you can say that with anything, like isn't it scary to go outside when it's dark?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
And you feed that, and then you create these things. Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting is that what we pay attention to, our children get rewarded because we ask them about it, and they're keen to tell us about it. And so it's getting that absolute balance right between noticing something and checking in with them to see whether or not actually they see it as an issue. And maybe now you've opened the question, he might be able to come in later. But the other part about it is, what is the skill that he needs to learn in order to be able to think, okay, nobody's come up to me to play today. How do I engage with people who are already in a activity? And thinking about, what's the question to ask him about what he wants to learn about?
Yeah. I think those, as my work with technology is about empowering and teaching people rather than scaring. Same thing here. I love that you, positioning in that way. What skill how can we look at this from a development perspective and skill? So what we want to give the kids, is a strong foundation in themselves. So in this particular situation, it would be, okay, first of all, actually, do I even want to play with anyone, or do I want to dig in the sand pit or go climbing on myself?
Fantastic question. Fantastic.
So that's the first thing, and then if the answer, I do want to play with someone, to give him the skill that communication, courage, I guess, to go up to someone, and it's almost some skills and some tools, like what do you even say? Hey, can I play with you guys? To give him it might be hard to come up with phrases themselves, so talk to them. Okay, if you want to play with someone, what do you do? How do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can recall years ago, one of my children had an exchange student come and stay, and they were having some activities, and I said to the exchange student, how was it? And she talked about kids being really mean to her. And I said, well, why did you say that? And she said, well, nobody spoke to me when I came up to the group. And actually I was watching at that time, and somebody had said to her, shall I move over? And she said, no, I don't want to. And so I asked her to say, just to really slow down her memory and to say, what actually did you say? And then what did the other person do? And then what did you do? And then because she had wiped it out of her mind. And so I think sometimes there's some psychological stuff going on. We actually don't remember entirely what actually happened.
Yeah, and memory is a completely different topic in itself. But I think it's important to be aware of, and whether it's your child telling you something that happened, or a conflict where you're trying to understand, okay, what actually happened. It's important to be aware of that we can transform and change memories. But back to this, I think or what I'll take away from just this short discussion on that question is first of all to be aware of that balance between not feeding but also being open, and what you said about they get rewarded and they get attention for things. And of course, if things that we're nervous about, for example bullying, being isolated, if they just say the tiniest thing, they get a massive response. So my 4-year-old just casually said, this boy and this boy, they watch me when I go to the toilet. And you can imagine how my reaction was. And I tried to be as casual back and be like, okay, is that something you want? Do you want them to? Because I mean, at kinder they like go to the toilet with open door, and it's nothing.
Sure.
But the way he said it made me feel like there were 2 boys and like they were, I don't know, being mean to him or something. So I said, okay, do they watch other people too? Do you? And then sort of trying to say, okay, if it's something you don't want, you can always go and talk to someone. Like leave it at that, not be like, oh my God, are they watching you when you go wee? I'm going to talk to their parents, or and then he's like, oh, I got attention for this, and it must be something of importance. So that's a really good point you said. And then that other thing about who's, what did you say, who's being hurt, being hurt. Is it Taino, 6 years old? Is it me as a parent? Is my pride being hurt, or is it actually something with my child? That's a good point.
And so going back to the idea of you talked about child development, and in terms especially of kids watching each other go pee when they're 6, that's a big part of their learning, isn't it? And so bodily functions and farting and all of that kind of stuff is a big part of boys' chatter and understanding how the world works, not only boys but girls and everybody else. And so being able to hold that conversation, just like you say, as a normal conversation, something that you check in about, but at the same time it's not something that we dismiss because we think, oh my God, I don't want to have to deal with that. So it's and again, it's this really hard road that parents have to walk.
Just thinking what else, because preparing for our chat here, I had a few things that came up. And this was the first one I came to think about. Well, another thing is different. It hasn't really become a problem yet, but it could, and that's different rules in different families. And also connecting it, I'm trying not to make this only about technology, my favorite topic, but just this morning, like half an hour ago, my 6-year-old said, My friend has an iPhone 8 and they're 6.
Yeah.
And it didn't really, it didn't turn into a big conversation. It stopped at, I would like one too. And then I was like, yeah, you know, different families have different rules.
Lovely.
When you're, I told him when I got my first phone when I was 13, and you know, talk to him about it a bit about it. Okay, what, you know, what would you use it for, and so on. So, but that's something, and not only with technology, but you know, different rules, and and how it can easily become like a peer pressure among parents, like he's allowed to do this and that, why am I not allowed to do that?
Yes, absolutely. And I like the way that you spoke originally about the values that you have as a family. And so our rules always come from, or our boundaries for our family always come from those values. And so it's quite useful to, when you have a conversation with your kids about it, to go back to what, you know, we want to be a family who does this. And therefore, we've made a decision that our children don't get smartphones until blah, blah, blah. And one of the strategies that I used for my kids, because we never had a PlayStation, you know, that was a thing back in the day, was, well, you know, when you go visit your mates, you've got something that you can hang, you know, you can do that's different. And when they come to us, they'll be doing something different. But I absolutely think, that it's useful to have conversations with the parents so that you don't get into that bind, and that you can accept that we have different ways of parenting. It's much easier if you're with your own tribe, in inverted commas, people who have a similar way of thinking about it, so that you know if they are watching some on the screen, it's not going to be something that you don't want them to be watching.
But how do I, you know, with his friends' parents, maybe it's just some social awkwardness, but I don't see, do you have any advice for like how to bring things like this up, and not only about screens, but like because I don't really feel like I can enforce my values or principles on them, and when he's with them, it's sort of their rules, so to say.
And so how would you bring something up if you were working in a different team at work? You know, because it's the same principle really. What strengths and tools do you have for bringing up difficult conversations at work?
I understand your point, but I feel like it's different at at work. I would, okay, a different team. I would probably ask questions rather than say the answers that I see. So if I would ask, hey, how do you guys? You know, I find I find this and that quite challenging. How do you guys work with that? And maybe that could work with parents too. Like, we, you know, we find it really tricky around technology and what they're allowed to use and not. What do you guys do about that?
And I think that what you're doing is you're saying that you would like to have a conversation that supports your ability to be able to work in the community. And as I said before, if you find people that have similar ways of thinking about it, it makes it easier. But obviously our children are going to have different rules about different things. And therefore your job is to be the leader of your family and to support your children to live the values that you want to live. And how can we borrow the skills that we might use in different parts of our lives to think about how do we open up a conversation that's a bit socially awkward?
Yeah. And but also I think it really, I mean, maybe there's a point in, and it's a good thing that different families have different rules, because our kids will be exposed to different things. And it sort of goes into my last point, which is a question that I would love to get your input on, which is, I guess, massive question. It's kind of how do I give them the skill of like resilience? in terms of, I think for me, it's about in my question to you, it's about like a strength to stand up for themselves and stand up for for our values. If they, you know, if someone is mean to someone else and they see that, I would.
So let's go back to let's go back to how children learn. They learn from watching you and your family. And so if you can speak respectfully, use the values between each other, that's how they learn. They'll model it from you. And if they see you as having a strong sense of who you are and being able to set a boundary, whether that's with your friend or whether that's with you or whether that's reminding the family about what the family rules are, then that's how they do something. And if you're thinking about how do we build skill, we build skill through practice. And we learn to trust ourselves by doing everyday things that make us feel competent. Learning how to carry our own bag, learning how to do our shoes up, learning how to sweep the floor. All of those things, which are really, really basic, help our children to become more and more competent every day. And I think one of the problems with the world that we're living in is that we don't have to do so much work as we used to just to maintain things. And especially in terms of cooking, for example, a lot of families don't spend a lot of time cooking anymore. And so the everyday kind of preparation of food hasn't become something that all the family can participate in necessarily. And so this is another reason why parents are finding it so hard, because what used to be something that just occurred naturally through the way that you lived your life, like if you were cold, you had to go cut the wood. But in today, you just flick a switch. And so it's that whole, delayed gratification, understanding that our effort matters. And so therefore, we have to put in our children's way things that help them to learn these things. And we also have to help them to learn that if they make a mistake or something goes wrong, that they have the resilience to withstand it, and that as parents, we don't make it easy for them. I'm not saying we make it hard for them, but we have to help them to experience the discomfort of being embarrassed or upset about something. And for us to be able to say, you're going to be a fine human being. It was an embarrassing situation. You will recover from that. And we model that as our in parenthood as well. What do you think about that?
I think it... lots to take in. I'll need to re-listen to this and write some stuff down. But first of all, being a role model, I think that's great. And it's that classical, they don't do what you say, they do what you do. Yeah. For good and for bad. And that's something, if different situations, standing up for, if I stand up for myself or for others, or there's a situation and I go in and take a stand for something, that would be very inspiring for them. So that's a great point. And also it is a very different world today, than just in our part of the world, compared with just a couple of decades ago, or definitely 100 years ago, and where their consideration of work, this is working for them. If they pretend to go to work, it's doing this, which is kind of weird and a bit upsetting to me. But what you said about all these technological advancements that have taken away a lot of the things that we would do. So our version of going out and chopping wood and getting the gratification of being warm is, for example, they're 4 and 6, as I said, and we ask them to help. They clear the table, they help empty the dishwasher, hang the laundry, and we talk about it like it's like putting in effort and seeing a result. And I think that goes in a bit to what you say about being a part of not making it too easy for them. And again, now I always connect it to technology, but like the easiest thing for me, if I'm emptying the dishwasher, the easiest thing for me would be take out the iPad. They're zombified for 10 minutes. I've got time to empty the dishwasher. That would be the easy thing for me. But I miss a bonding moment with my kids. I take the shortcut, which isn't always the best. I think parents, my generation of parents, often try to, like, we're so used to making everything in our society efficient.
Yeah.
That we do that with parenthood as well, and like taking the fastest, just seeing the end goal. Okay, the end goal is, well, not really, but the apparent end goal is feeding the kids, cleaning the clothes, clearing the dishwasher, putting them to bed. These things. They're the
That's the short term. That's the short term goal.
Exactly. Yeah. The short term goals. And by if we rationalize and make the short term goals efficient, we miss, I think, what we're talking about, which is the long term, the ones that are hard to measure now, but you see the results, and talk about delayed gratification. I mean, if we teach them skills now, we'll see the results in 1, 5, 10 years. Some results we'll see, when they're adults.
Yes.
Which I guess makes it kind of hard to. Yeah, it's easy taking the shortcuts, and I think that every now and then it's totally fine to take those shortcuts.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the iPad or fast food or whatever it is to make life easier, as long as it doesn't become a pattern. And I think that's when it can spill over to harming not harming their development, but not being ideal for their development or for the parent-child.
So going back to, carrying the dishes up to the dishwasher or up to the bench, they're also learning about science, aren't they? Weight, gravity, hopefully not, but also being really useful members of the community and your family. And so you're right, there are so many things that our children learn. And actually, if you did that with your partners or your kids, you could, even if it was something little like setting the table for a 4-year-old, and write down all the skills that they were learning as a result of that, we would keep them doing that job forever.
Yeah. So I guess the sentiment there is like, there's, like what you said, not making life too easy for them, because and again, we both New Zealand and Sweden, and not everyone in society, but a lot of people are quite fortunate and don't have it too hard. There are those who do as well, but for us, for example, the school is, I don't know, 800 meters away. And a lot, like in our little village here, everyone has really close to the school, and a lot of people drive their kids to school. And I think that's an example of this as well. Like, well, we bike or we walk, and I've even taken it as far as talking to them about how in other parts of the world, kids might not even go to school, or might have to walk for kilometers to come to the closest school. And not to make them feel bad at all, but I'm raised, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I went to school in Bolivia, I went to school in Zimbabwe, we've traveled a lot in less developed parts of the world, and I have a very good insight and a lot of respect, and awareness of how privileged I am, and I think it's a balance between I'm not trying to make them feel guilty at all, but just like telling them, yeah, okay, you want to take the car to go 800 meters. Did you know that some kids have to walk really, really far, or not go to school? So that's a tiny thing that that I'm
not,
quite hard
yeah,
like trying
not to mention the state of the planet either.
Definitely, and that's could be a
That's a
completely
whole other
different
thing.
conversation about how we teach them to take care of the planet and
yeah. And so there's lots of research around the understanding how privilege and the impact of overindulgence plays out on children. And actually, if we don't pay attention, the results are pretty horrible. And so it is worth it for us as parents to become aware of these everyday things that we can do to influence the way that our children feel competent, that we're not doing things for them, that we're not thinking for them, and that they're learning incrementally about how to manage their lives.
Yes, and think, sorry to cut in, thinking for them is a massive one. Actually, when they come to us and say, I'm bored, or I have nothing to do, or what should I do? And we can, again, the easy and efficient way is, you can play with that Lego, build a tower, see how high you can make it. And that's, feeding them with rules, or not rules, but like a map of what to do. So yeah, just cutting in on that. That's a great point on not doing everything for them, but and seeing that we're not harming them. We're on the opposite. We're helping them to develop.
And if you're thinking about those little neural pathways every time they have to stop and think, those little neurons are growing. And they're becoming more and more laid down, the ability to be able to think. And we need critical thinkers in this world. We need creative thinkers in order to be able to solve the massive problems that we face. Well, what a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
What a great way to start the day for me and the day for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we might have another conversation about at another time. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to do that. That would be lovely. And so I'll say goodbye and